Consider the following scenario. You are ascending to great heights in the sky when abruptly, without warning, your aircraft's engines cease to function. The lives of all aboard are at risk as panic ensues. However, what is the subsequent course of action? The pilot's extraordinary split-second decision to save the day will astound you. This is an account of a miracle in the sky, as well as skill and fortitude. Stay with us until the conclusion to witness the genuine heroism of this pilot and learn how the unimaginable was prevented. I assure you that you will not want to overlook this extraordinary event. On August 15th, 2019, Ural Airlines Flight 178, an Airbus A321, departed on what was anticipated to be a routine voyage from Moscow-Zhukovsky to Simferopol. Nevertheless, the flight encountered an unforeseen and severe challenge shortly after departure. The aircraft and its personnel were subjected to a critical situation that strained their capabilities. The pilot's quick reasoning and decisive actions were essential during the course of this unfolding drama. This pilot's exceptional skill and composure under duress were demonstrated in a dramatic sequence of events that ultimately influenced the outcome of this high-stakes emergency. On August 15, 2019, Ural Airlines Flight 178 departed from Zhukovsky International Airport in Moscow for Simferopol, Crimea, on a seemingly routine summer morning. The Airbus A321, which was carrying 226 passengers and 7 crew members, had scarcely ascended into the atmosphere when the unthinkable transpired. The flight was plunged into an unprecedented crisis as a result of a collision with a large flock of seabirds. The CFM-565 engines of the aircraft were both critically compromised within seconds. The right engine was able to produce only a whisper of thrust after a second strike, which was insufficient to maintain the flight, while the left engine utterly failed following the initial bird strike. The passengers, many of whom were unaware of the imminent danger, were abruptly thrust into a terrifying freefall toward the earth. In the midst of the chaos, a passenger was able to capture the plane's rapid descent as it plummeted toward a nearby cornfield on their phone, documenting the unfolding calamity. The pilots, who were previously trained to handle emergencies, were now confronted with the most severe of circumstances and were aware that they had only a few seconds to react. This was the case inside the cockpit. They made the split-second decision to execute an emergency landing in a field located 2.8 nautical miles, 5.2 kilometers from the airport, as they had no option for returning to the runway. An extraordinary display of airmanship ensued. The pilots were able to safely land the crippled aircraft amidst rows of maize. Despite the overwhelming odds, the captain stated that they intentionally refrained from deploying the landing gear, as they were under the impression that the impact would be mitigated by skidding across the maize without the additional drag of the gear. Although investigators subsequently refuted this explanation in a leaked report, the fact remained that the decision likely played a critical role in preventing a catastrophe. The aircraft, which was remarkably unharmed, screeched to a halt. What could have been an unimaginable tragedy moment for the passengers was transformed into a tale of survival. The devastation was able to be escaped by all 233 individuals on board. The image of the downed aircraft resting in a sea of corn rapidly became a symbol of triumph in the face of disaster. Nevertheless, the relief was somewhat diminished by the realization that a significant number of individuals had suffered injuries. Initially, the precise number of injured passengers was uncertain due to the fact that the criteria for classifying injuries were inconsistent. 55 individuals were treated at the crash site and 29 were transported to neighboring hospitals. Of those, 23 were confirmed to have sustained injuries, with 6 necessitating extended hospitalizations. In the end, the official count was 74 injured, which is an astonishingly low figure in light of the circumstances. Additionally, none of the injuries were classified as grievous. Ural Airlines awarded each passenger 100,000 rubles, equivalent to $1,358, as compensation in the aftermath, a modest gesture in recognition of their survival of a near-death experience. The wreckage was examined by investigators who attempted to determine the sequence of events that resulted in the bird impact and the subsequent loss of engine power. The event rekindled debates about the critical significance of pilot training, the razor-thin margin between disaster and survival in the skies, and aviation safety protocols with respect to bird strikes. The true challenges that the aircraft confronted were about to be revealed as the crew's swift actions transformed a disaster into a remarkable survival story. The Airbus A321, which was constructed in 2003, was the subject of the dramatic incident. It was registered in Bermuda as VQBNZ and had a manufacturer's serial number of 2117. The aircraft's journey through the aviation industry was anything but straightforward. Initially designated for My Travel Airways under the registration GYMSA, the airline ultimately declined to accept it. From that point forward, the aircraft undertook a sequence of transfers between various operators. Initially, it was transferred to Cyprus Turkish Airlines and operated under the registration TC-KTD. Subsequently, it was incorporated into the Atlas Global Fleet as TC-ATZ in 2010. It briefly operated as EIIEU for Solaris Airlines in 2011, but it ultimately found a permanent home with Ural Airlines later that year, adopting the familiar registration VQB-NZ. The Airbus A321's fate was sealed on August 15, 2019, when it crashed during a landing after years of service with multiple carriers. The aircraft was declared irreparable due to the severe damage it sustained during the emergency landing. This was not only a mechanical casualty, but also the sixth hull loss of an Airbus A321, which is a significant event in the annals of aviation accident. The aircraft, which had previously traversed the airways of Europe and the Middle East, was now scheduled for disposal in the same field where it had been stranded. The decision was made by Ural Airlines to disassemble the wreckage on the premises. The airline concluded the narrative of VQBNZ on August 23, 2019, by conducting an operation to disassemble the damaged aircraft. Captain Dair Yusupov, a 41-year-old pilot with more than 3,000 hours of flight experience, was in control of Ural Airlines Flight 178 during its perilous descent. In 2013, Yusupov was awarded a degree in air navigation from the Ulyanov Institute of Civil Aviation, following his graduation from the esteemed Buguruslan Flight School of Civil Aviation. He possessed the requisite calm and expertise to direct the aircraft through its emergency landing, a feat that would be regarded as one of the most extraordinary acts of piloting in modern aviation. As a result of his extensive training and experience, he was accompanied in the cockpit by 23-year-old First Officer Georgi Marin, a co-pilot who, despite being relatively new, was highly trained. Marin also graduated from the Buguruslan Flight School in 2017, having accumulated over 600 hours of flight time. Marin's professionalism was evident in his contributions during the critical moments of the flight, despite the fact that he was still in the early phases of his career. The two pilots collaborated to establish a cohesive and efficient team, which responded to the abrupt loss of engine power with precision and command. 5 flight attendants were present to support the pilots, and they were equally critical in preserving passenger safety and maintaining order as the situation developed. The miraculous outcome of the accident landing, in which all 226 passengers survived, was undoubtedly influenced by their ability to remain composed and adhere to their emergency protocols. Captain Yusupov and his crew were celebrated as heroes in the aftermath of the catastrophe. Their swift decision-making and expert management of the aircraft's malfunctioning prevented what could have been a catastrophic incident. The narrative shifts to reveal the aircraft's unexpected conclusion and intriguing past after the miraculous landing is completed. Not only was the avian strike that nearly brought down Ural Airlines Flight 178 a tragic accident, but it was also a component of a more extensive systemic issue. Local bird control measures have encountered significant challenges in managing the increasing number of birds in the vicinity of Moscow-Zhukovsky International Airport, which has been primarily attributed to the presence of nearby illegal refuse dumps. These waste sites, which are brimming with edible refuse, attract swarms of birds, notably gulls, resulting in a perilous intersection between wildlife and aviation. In fact, there were concerns regarding the proximity of waste processing facilities to the airport's runways as early as 2012. A lawsuit was filed against the administration of one of these sites, which is situated a mere 2 kilometers, 1.2 miles, from the airport. The plaintiffs contended that the facility's sheer volume of birds presented an immediate threat to human life and aircraft. The court ultimately ruled in favor of the waste site operators, despite the warnings, as it found insufficient grounds to cease their activities. In 2019, the waste site in issue transitioned its operations, no longer sorting or storing household waste. Instead, It compacted and transferred it for further disposal. However, the activities were still conducted outdoors, which continued to attract colonies of birds to the region. Air traffic controllers at Zhukovsky were acutely aware of the hazards that these refuse sites presented. One controller observed that they issue warnings to all departing aircraft. The birds are constantly present on the runway, as there is a river and a dump in the vicinity. The consistent presence of birds in the area created a hazardous environment for takeoffs and landings, and despite the implementation of safety measures, incidents such as the one that occurred on Flight 178 were nearly inevitable. In September 2019, Rosaviatsaya, Russia's Federal Air Transport Agency, proposed more stringent measures in response to the increasing apprehensions that followed the accident landing of Flight 178. The agency suggested that law enforcement collaborate with it to investigate the legality of refuse dumps in close proximity to airports. They also advocated for more stringent airport inspections to monitor and reduce the presence of birds in order to prevent a recurrence of near misses, such as Flight 178. The incident highlighted the urgent necessity for more stringent environmental and regulatory controls in the vicinity of airports, not only in Russia, but on a global scale. Although pilots and air traffic controllers are limited in their ability to prevent avian strikes, it is crucial to address the underlying causes, such as illegal waste sites, in order to safeguard future flights. The avian strike incident has revealed a more extensive issue, which could potentially alter the future of aviation safety by revealing systemic failures. Immediately following the crash, Ural Airlines utilized social media to communicate with the public. A Twitter statement was issued stating that Flight U-6178 Zhukovsky-Simferopol sustained multiple bird strikes to the aircraft engines on departure from Zhukovsky. The aircraft successfully executed an emergency landing in a cornfield located in close proximity to the airport. No casualties were reported. All passengers are alive. This prompt response exemplified the airline's dedication to crisis communication and transparency. Additionally, the airline implemented an innovative initiative to provide its passengers with compensation, providing each of them with 100,000 rubles, approximately $1,350, as a token of appreciation. Although this financial compensation was minimal, it was one of the few methods by which the airline could recognize the traumatic experience its passengers had undergone. Even more extraordinary, the pilot's involvement in the incident became a focal point of public admiration. The heroic actions of Captain Yusupov and First Officer Marin were widely praised on social media platforms, with many praising their composure, quick thinking, and skilled execution of a precisely executed crash landing. The pilot's command of the situation transformed what could have been a catastrophic tragedy into a miraculous triumph. The incident will be remembered as one of the most remarkable instances of contemporary aviation safety, underscoring the significance of pilot training, the ability to make rapid decisions, and the ability to remain composed in emergency situations. The survival of the passengers on Ural Airlines Flight 178 will be forever remembered as the ultimate success story of an otherwise disastrous flight, thanks to the airline's support and the fortitude of the crew. And that concludes the matter. The remarkable narrative of how a proficient pilot and his team transformed a life-threatening emergency into a miraculous rescue. It serves as evidence that technology alone is not always sufficient. Rather, it is the human spirit and expertise that provide the solution. Please ensure that you like the video and subscribe to the channel for additional jaw-dropping stories if you were astounded by this extraordinary moment in aviation history. Enable notifications to ensure that you never overlook an extraordinary narrative such as this one, as the sky is the limit when it comes to aviation marvels. Please leave a comment below and inform us of your thoughts. What do you believe would have transpired if the pilot had not acted so promptly? We would be delighted to receive your feedback. We appreciate your attention and look forward to our next video.